In a hotel room in New York, an old man opened his window and looked out at a city full of electric light. The streets below were bright, signs burned in the dark, office towers held light high above the ground, elevators moved inside glowing walls. Power ran through wires, under streets, across bridges, into restaurants, homes, factories, and night offices. The modern city no longer feared darkness in the old way. Nikola Tesla had helped make that world possible, but the man at the window did not live like a conqueror of the modern age. He was old. He lived in hotels. Bills followed him. His body had grown thin. His habits had become strange. The city used the kind of power he had helped make practical, but it did not give him a calm or secure life in return. That is why his story still feels so strong. He was not only an inventor. He was not only a genius. He was one of the clearest examples of a mind powerful enough to change civilization, yet not powerful enough to save his owner from loneliness, financial collapse, and private sadness. To understand that contrast, you have to go back before New York, before Edison, before alternating current, before the bright fairs and giant power stations. You have to go back to a boy in a family house, to storms, to grief, to family pressure, and to a mind that seemed to move faster than ordinary life around it.
Chapter 1. A Boy Under Stormlight. Nikola Tesla was born on July 10, 1856, in Smiljan, in what was then part of the Austrian Empire. His father was a Serbian Orthodox priest. His mother, though not formally trained as an engineer, was practical, inventive, and good with tools. Tesla would later remember her with unusual respect. She could solve household problems with her hands and mind. In a real way, she was his first example of invention. People have long repeated the story that he was born during a storm. The line has stayed close to him because it feels right, even if later retellings may have made the moment larger. His life really would become tied to force, risk, and light. His early world was not modern New York. It was a family home, rural land, weather, prayer, household work, and memory. This matters because Tesla did not grow out of factories. He grew out of a smaller world where nature still felt huge and where family feeling could fill the whole house. One wound of that house was the death of his older brother, Dane. The boy was admired, and the loss shook the family. Tesla grew up under that shadow. It is hard to measure exactly how much this shaped him, but the pressure seems real. A gifted younger son now lived in the house after the older one was gone. Love, grief, and expectation stood close together. Tesla was a sensitive child. He was also a mentally intense one. Later in life, he described strong inner images and moments when thoughts seemed almost physical. For some people, imagination is a shelter. For Tesla, it became both a working method and a burden. His mother and father helped shape the two strongest lines in him. From his father came discipline, language, and the force of expectation. From his mother came practical intelligence, memory, and the feeling that clever hands could change daily life. It is easy to say that and move on too quickly, but one should slow down here. In the family house, invention did not first arrive as a patent or a lecture. It arrived in useful things made by hand. Tesla watched a woman solve problems without fanfare. That memory stayed in him. Together, these family forces made a powerful beginning, but they did not make an easy life. From the start, Tesla seemed like someone who would not be satisfied with ordinary limits. He did not only want a stable place in the world, he wanted to see beyond what other people could already see. That hunger would build greatness. It would also make peace difficult.
Chapter 2. The Mind That Would Not Rest. As Tesla grew older, his intelligence became impossible to ignore. He studied in Europe and moved toward engineering, mathematics, and technical systems. But what made him unusual was not only that he could learn difficult things, it was that his mind seemed to work at an unusual level of pressure. He remembered books easily. He could picture devices in the mind and test them there before touching metal with his hands. He did not naturally think in small repairs. He thought in systems. That helped him. It also made ordinary life harder. Tesla was not built for a slow, balanced path. His young years included illness, exhaustion, and restlessness. When he fell gravely ill with cholera, his family feared he might die. During that crisis, the future itself seemed close to disappearing. His father had once imagined a religious path for him. Tesla wanted engineering. That struggle matters because it shows what was already at stake in his life, not just what job he would take, but what kind of person he would be allowed to become. He recovered, but recovery did not make him calm. It returned him to the same driving force that had already been there. School did not turn him into an easy institutional success. He was bright, ambitious, and hard-working, but his life was not a smooth line of degree, position, and rising comfort. He lived more restlessly than that. His mind kept moving ahead of the structures around him. One of the most famous stories from his youth tells of a moment when the idea behind a rotating magnetic field became clear to him while he was walking and talking with a friend. The story may have grown more polished in later retelling, but its core meaning fits the man. For Tesla, invention often began inwardly. He saw patterns first. That way of thinking separated him from many more practical men around him. He loved elegance. He wanted systems that fit together beautifully. He wanted order hidden inside force. But high mental force does not guarantee a good life. Even before America, the tension is visible. Tesla's mind was very strong. His place inside normal human structures was less secure. He was better at vision than at comfort, better at design than at daily balance. One can almost see the future man already there, a young person standing in the middle of ordinary life, but not truly resting in it. A family meal, a room, a book, a school experience, a walk outside, and inside him, the machine of the mind still turning. That is one reason the mother line matters even later. She had practical skill. He had vision of enormous scale. He inherited the usefulness, but he pushed it towards something so large that it became difficult to house inside an ordinary human life. America would sharpen that difference until everyone could see it. Chapter 3. New York and Edison. In 1884, Nikola Tesla went to the United States. He reached New York with talent, training, and hope, but not with stable ground beneath him. The city was harsh, commercial, and fast. It was not waiting with softness for a brilliant immigrant. It was a place where ideas had to survive business, exhaustion, and money. The arrival itself matters. The harbor, the noise, the dirt, the rush of traffic, the pressure of work, the shock of the new city, all of this stood far from the smaller world where Tesla had begun. He was entering a harder age in a harder place. Tesla entered the orbit of Thomas Edison. This pairing became famous because it brought together two very different kinds of men. Edison stood for relentless practical work, business drive, and large industrial organization. Tesla carried a more abstract, system-level mind. He wanted elegance, order, and wide conceptual solutions. Edison could live inside rough commercial struggle. Tesla wanted something cleaner and larger. It would be a mistake to turn this into a simple moral story. Edison was not merely a cartoon enemy, and Tesla was not merely a pure victim, but the mismatch was real. Tesla could work hard, he was not lazy, yet he was not made for quiet obedience inside someone else's machine. He wanted more than employment. He wanted transformation. Stories later grew around money disputes between the two men. Some are repeated too neatly to be treated as simple fact, but the important truth is clear enough. Tesla left Edison's orbit feeling that this industrial world did not truly fit his mind. And then his life became more unstable, not less. The later legend can make people forget that Tesla did not move straight from arrival to glory. He fell into difficulty. At one point, he even worked digging ditches. This image matters because it strips away myth. A man who would later be linked to the electric future could still become ordinary labor in a city that had not yet found a place for him. That is one of the harsh truths of immigration and genius. Brilliance does not protect a person from humiliation. A powerful mind can still stand in mud and do rough work if money runs out. The ditch-digging image deserves to stay because it says something bigger than hardship. It shows that Tesla's life was never a straight heroic rise. Again and again, he moved between visions of the future and the blunt facts of survival. But even there, the larger answer did not leave him. Tesla still believed the modern electric world could be built differently. He still carried a better system in the mind. The question was whether anyone with money and institutional force would see its value in time. Chapter 4. The War of Currents. The answer began to change when Tesla's ideas around alternating current found stronger support. The central issue did not need to be mysterious. What kind of electric system could serve a large modern world better? Direct current had serious limits over distance. Alternating current offered a more practical way to move power farther and on a larger scale. This is where George Westinghouse becomes one of the most important secondary figures in Tesla's life. Westinghouse was not just a rich helper in the background. He was one of the men able to recognize that a system idea could become a real industrial order. Without men like that, invention stays small. With them, it can move into cities. Tesla's patents became central to the AC rise. What followed became known as the War of Currents, and the phrase fits because this was not only a technical disagreement, it was a business war, a public image war, and a struggle over how the future would be built. Fear was part of the fight. Alternating current was presented by opponents as dangerous. Public fear campaigns tried to make the system look deadly and morally suspect. Electricity, which could light a room, was also shown as something that could kill. Tesla's response was not only argument, it was demonstration. He could stand before people and make electric force appear not only frightening, but controlled, useful, and almost beautiful. This was one of his great public gifts. He did not merely talk about systems, he gave them form in the room. Westinghouse mattered here because he helped carry Tesla's system into practical fight. Tesla did not have to stand alone against the entire industrial order. For a time, he had a powerful ally who understood that the future might belong to the wider, more flexible system. That alliance also shows another truth about Tesla. He needed people who could translate vision into finance, contracts, factories, and steel. He was strongest when such people stood near him. He became more vulnerable when they did not. This chapter should also carry one hard truth about Tesla and money. He could help shape a great victory and still remain personally vulnerable inside it. Even in success, his life did not become as stable as his importance. The world moved toward him. Security did not. Chapter 5. The Man Who Lit Distance. In the 1890s, the electric future began to look real on a huge public scale. At the Chicago Fair of 1893, electric light helped create a vision of modern wonder. People did not only hear speeches about a coming age, they stood inside bright spaces and felt the future with their own eyes. For many, it was not a technical lesson, it was an emotional shock. The night itself looked changed. Imagine a crowd used to gaslight and older darkness suddenly seeing wide public brightness spread across buildings and water. Families walked past lit structures, faces turned upward. Reporters tried to describe the sight. The new light did not simply appear useful, it appeared like a new kind of public confidence. Tesla fit that moment perfectly. He was elegant, intense, theatrical without being loud, and able to stand before light as if he understood its private language. But the deepest proof came with Niagara Falls. Niagara mattered because it showed that large power could be generated and sent where people needed it. This was not a lecture room trick. It was the modern world taking a major step towards scale. Power could move farther. Cities and industry could rely on systems larger than local limitations. When power from Niagara began serving places beyond the falls themselves, the meaning grew larger. The old obstacle of distance no longer looked so powerful. The modern century would be organized more and more by systems that reached beyond one building, one block, one local machine. This is where Tesla's life becomes larger than a normal inventor biography. His work helped make practical long-distance power distribution real on a grand scale. That means his story lives not only in books about science, it lives in the physical history of modern civilization. A city lit at night, a factory running with dependable power, a home connected to a wider system. These things do not belong to Tesla alone, and the script should never pretend otherwise, but his role in this transformation was major. Westinghouse again matters here. Tesla's ideas did not lift Niagara by themselves. They had to be financed, organized, and built into the world. One of the reasons Tesla's life feels tragic is that he could help make vast order possible while never becoming the kind of man who could securely manage that order for himself. This chapter should be felt almost physically. Distance grows weaker. Darkness loses ground. The modern world begins to glow more steadily. And the man at the center of this change? He becomes more famous. He becomes more admired. But admiration and security are not the same thing. Tesla was helping build stability for civilization. He was not building equal stability for his own life. Chapter 6. Tesla, the Wonder Worker. By the 1890s, Nikola Tesla had become one of the most striking public figures in modern science.
He gave lectures, he staged demonstrations, he handled electric effects in ways that made audiences feel they were seeing not only experiments, but signs of a future world stepping into the room. Reporters watched him closely, crowds watched him closely. He was tall, polished, and intense. He looked less like a factory mechanic and more like a figure sent from the next age. This helped the fame. So did the demonstrations themselves. Light without ordinary expectation, controlled force, new motions, strange beauty. He could make invisible systems feel almost magical while still keeping one foot in real engineering. In lecture rooms and public halls, people saw bright effects, heard technical language they did not fully understand, and still came away with the same impression. This man seemed close to the machinery of the future. That public feeling became part of Tesla's fame. This chapter should not be reduced to stage tricks. The public performances mattered because they made people feel the size of the coming electric age. They also widened the distance between Tesla's public image and his private life. It became easier and easier to see him as a symbol and harder to see him as a man who still needed ordinary anchors. He did not build those anchors well. He did not marry. He did not form a stable family life. He lived more and more through work, ritual, image, and mental intensity. Even his habits could become severe. Cleanliness, exact numbers, repeated routines, careful distance from ordinary physical contact. These later became famous parts of his personality. Some people saw genius in them. Some saw strain. Both were likely present. Then came another blow. In 1895, Tesla's New York laboratory was destroyed by fire. Papers, models, instruments, years of work, all of it went into smoke and ruin. This loss matters because it happened in the middle of public greatness. The world could look at Tesla and see brilliance, but his actual position remained more fragile than his image suggested. He could recover outward movement after disaster, but every disaster carried cost. He kept going, and that matters. He was not a weak man, but every recovery pushed the same problem forward instead of solving it. He could restore motion. He could not restore a stable life. That cost would matter more and more as the years went on.
Chapter 7. Wardenclyffe. If one wants to find the great tragic monument in Tesla's life, one must look at Wardenclyffe. Before the tower itself, there was Colorado Springs, where Tesla worked with high-voltage experiments that fed his already enormous ambition. He did not want a small improvement to existing life. He wanted to push farther into the future. Colorado Springs deepened his sense that he was working with forces bigger than ordinary engineering. There, surrounded by open space and violent electrical effects, he could feel that he was standing near something immense. That feeling helped feed the dream that later rose at Wardenclyffe. One can picture the scene. Open land, great electrical discharges, machines pushing force into the air. A man already inclined toward large visions, feeling confirmed in the belief that the future might be wider than other people thought. Colorado did not by itself destroy Tesla, but it enlarged his ambition. Wardenclyffe carried some of his largest hopes: wireless transmission, global communication, vast system thinking, a world connected by force moving through space itself. This was not a modest project. It held ambition at full size. That is why it still hurts to read about it. Tesla found support from J.P. Morgan, one of the strongest financial forces of the age. Morgan is important not only because he gave money, but because he represented the kind of power Tesla never truly controlled. Tesla could impress great men. He could not reliably keep them patient. Money from men like Morgan always came with limits. Investors wanted understandable paths, clear control, and believable returns. Tesla often thought at a scale larger than those limits. He wanted not just one profitable service, but a transformed future. Meanwhile, the world did not stand still and wait kindly for him. Competition rose. Marconi gained public ground in wireless work. Tesla's grand tower began to look less like a coming triumph and more like a giant question mark against the sky. This is where the biography becomes openly tragic. A structure rose, but not a complete new order around it. Bills came due, trust weakened, support thinned. The dream no longer matched the money holding it up. Morgan matters here as more than a name in a history book. He stands for a reality Tesla could never escape. A visionary still had to answer to the world of finance. No matter how large the dream, it could not float free from money, patience, and power. Tesla's weakness before business reality had appeared before. At Wardenclyffe, it became undeniable. He could imagine at world scale. He could not always build the bridge from vision to lasting survival.
The tower later came down. In 1917, it was demolished and sold for scrap to satisfy debt. That fact makes the story harsher. The dream did not only fade, its great visible symbol was physically broken apart and sold. That is why Wardenclyffe is not only a failed project, it is the place where Tesla's greatness and helplessness stand in the same frame. Chapter 8. The World Moves On. After Wardenclyffe, the modern world did not stop becoming more electric, more connected, or more dependent on the kind of systems Tesla had helped make possible. Companies grew, engineers kept building, cities widened, power systems spread. The century became more and more dependent on invisible force moving through organized networks. And Tesla? He did not stand securely at the center of that expanding order. He moved through later years with less money, less institutional power, and less stable daily life than people might expect from a man of his influence. He still had admirers, he still had interviews, he still received moments of public respect. But admiration is a weak form of shelter when debts are real and the years are long. This chapter should not be told as simple unfairness. Tesla's troubles did not come only from bad luck or bad enemies. They also came from his own limits. He was proud. He was difficult. He did not naturally build the kinds of partnerships that help gifted people survive over decades. At the same time, the imbalance remained striking. The world he had helped energize grew larger, while his own life grew narrower. That narrowing can be told more plainly. Wardenclyffe was gone. Other men and companies ran the century. Tesla still gave interviews, still announced large future ideas, and still sounded at times like a man looking far ahead. But the practical base under his life had grown weak. He stayed at hotels. Debts followed him from one address to another. The names changed, but the pattern did not. For years, he had connections to the Waldorf Astoria. Later, in the 1930s, he spent his final decade at the Hotel New Yorker. Hotel life became part of that narrowing. Managers, staff, and friends sometimes protected him for a while, then watched trouble return. This was not one dramatic collapse on one day. It was a long thinning of ordinary support. That long thinning is important because it makes the later loneliness historical, not symbolic. He woke in hotel rooms. He ordered meals. He guarded his routines. He sent attention and feeling toward pigeons. He kept living inside a city that glowed with the future, and more he lived at its edge.
By this point, Edison had become part of the older industrial story. Westinghouse had played his historical role, and Morgan had long since stood for the hard law of money. Tesla remained, but he remained in a smaller and lonelier form than the age he had helped energize. Chapter 9. The Old Man and the Hotel Room. In later years, Tesla's loneliness became one of the defining images of his life. The pigeons became part of that image. Some people hear the story and think only of eccentricity, but the sadness is deeper than that. His emotional life had not disappeared, it had changed shape. Ordinary human closeness had narrowed. Attention and tenderness moved elsewhere. Tesla once spoke with unusual feeling about a white pigeon he believed loved him and needed him. Whether listeners find that heartbreaking or strange, the meaning is hard to miss. His capacity for devotion was still alive. It had simply moved into a smaller and more solitary world. The image of the old man feeding pigeons in New York stays with people because it joins tenderness and loneliness in one act. Outside was a metallic, electric, vertical city. Inside was a thin old inventor whose private world had become small. Staff members in hotels sometimes saw the contradiction closely. They did not see only a legend, they saw a guest with habits, needs, debts, pride, and decline. In that sense, the hotel years are more than a poetic ending. They are the daily human truth of what happened when a world-changing mind did not build a durable private life. One can picture the room itself more clearly than many hero stories allow. A bed, papers, small personal objects, windows looking out at a city still alive with force and movement, and one old man carrying a name far bigger than the comfort around him. Tesla stayed proud. He stayed intense. He stayed in some ways larger than the room around him, but the room was still a room. The bills were still bills. The body still aged. He died in New York on January 7, 1943, alone in his room at the New Yorker Hotel. What happened next adds historical weight to the ending. During wartime, officials from the Office of Alien Property took possession of many papers from Tesla's room. Even after death, his life moved immediately into another struggle, not now over money, but over what might still be hidden in his ideas and documents. That detail matters because it keeps the ending from becoming only poetic. The world still saw value in Tesla, still feared what his papers might contain, and still moved quickly around his name. But none of that changed the basic human fact that he had died alone. Public memory did not vanish. Newspapers, obituaries, and later biographies kept returning to the same contradiction: a man of vast influence, a life of narrowing comfort. New York Mayor Fiorello LaGuardia even gave a radio tribute soon after Tesla's death. The public could honor him. It still had not given him an easy life. That is why the ending stays heavy, not because it is mysterious, but because it is plain. The electric age kept shining. Its great lonely dreamer was gone. Epilogue. Nikola Tesla helped make the modern electric world possible. He stood inside the rise of alternating current, large-scale power, and the public imagination of the future. He helped move light and power across distance. He lost Wardenclyffe. He spent his last years in hotels. He died at the New Yorker in 1943. Officials took his papers. The city outside stayed bright. That is the story.